The silver objects reported over the Nevada desert in the 1950s belonged to a classified CIA testing program. Area 51 served as a high-stakes proving ground for experimental aircraft designed to pierce the secrecy of the Soviet Union. The modern mythology of flying saucers was a byproduct of a secret mission to peek over the Iron Curtain. In the early years of the Cold War, the United States had a terrifying problem. They were completely blind to what the Soviet Union was building behind the Iron Curtain. When the Soviets suddenly revealed their new Myasishchev-4 long-range jet, known as the Bison bomber, panic set in. Washington feared the Soviets were mass-producing an armada capable of launching a surprise nuclear strike against the American mainland. American military commanders tried sending traditional aircraft across the border to photograph the target zones, but planes like the heavily armed RB-47 Stratojet were repeatedly detected and shot down by aggressive Soviet air defenses. This diagram illustrates the physical limit of that Soviet defense network. The target tracking radar and fighter interceptors of the era maxed out between 45,000 and 60,000 feet. If an aircraft could sustain flight at 65,000 feet, it could cruise safely above the threats. Obtaining the reconnaissance needed to evaluate the Soviet nuclear threat required an aircraft capable of touching the edge of space. To reach the stratosphere, you must solve a strict equation. This animated scale shows the mechanics. Thrust and lift must overcome weight, but thin atmosphere reduces thrust to 6%. The Air Force's solution was adding a second engine, armor, and machine guns. That heavy-duty design philosophy was championed by the top military brass, particularly Strategic Air Command's General Curtis LeMay. He had zero interest in flying a plane that lacked conventional landing gear or defensive firepower. The military's demands created an insurmountable physics problem. An airframe's stress to hold heavy armor and multi-engine power plants was simply too dense. The thin air could never generate enough lift to carry that much mass to 70,000 feet. Relying on traditional military strength directly violated the laws of aerodynamics required for extreme altitude. To survive, the design philosophy had to be inverted. Lockheed engineer Kelly Johnson recognized this immediately. He submitted a radical blueprint called the CL-282. Instead of a traditional combat jet, he designed a jet-propelled sailplane with a massive, high-aspect ratio wing. Johnson achieved lift through subtractive engineering. This wireframe model shows him stripping away military features to solve the equation. He utilized a single engine and an unpressurized cockpit. He eliminated the landing gear entirely, instead using a reinforced belly rib and a jettisonable wooden dolly. The engineering team became obsessed with this extreme lightness. Every 10 pounds of empty weight they could shave off was jokingly referred to as a grandmother, because the designers claimed they would trade their own grandmothers to save the mass. The Air Force generals rejected the design outright, but a group of civilian scientists advising the president realized Johnson's physics were perfectly balanced. They bypassed the military entirely and convinced the CIA to fund the project. Securing the needed intelligence required bypassing the military establishment in favor of a specialized civilian-led program. Operating under maximum secrecy, Lockheed engineers completed an 8-month manufacturing sprint to construct the first prototypes of the aircraft, now officially designated the U-2. Testing an experimental, highly classified glider meant they couldn't use a standard runway. The CIA needed a remote, secure location hidden from both the public and Soviet spies. They found an isolated dry lake bed in the Nevada desert. Getting top engineers to move to a desolate wasteland wasn't easy, so Kelly Johnson cheekily named the site Paradise Ranch, simply to trick his reluctant workers into accepting the difficult assignment. The CIA established Area 51 on this barren lake bed as a secure laboratory for aeronautical experiments. This flight path simulation shows the incredible result of Johnson's design. The U-2's broad wings generated an astonishing 25.6 to 1 lift-to-drag ratio. If the engine died at maximum altitude, the plane could glide 300 miles without power. The U-2 successfully penetrated Soviet airspace and mapped the hidden military installations below. The clear photographs proved the terrifying bomber gap was a myth, gathering the critical intelligence that prevented World War III. But the aircraft's unique physical traits caused an unexpected phenomenon. While the U-2 operated safely above the reach of early warning radar, it was highly visible to commercial airline pilots flying tens of thousands of feet below it. In the thin atmosphere, the sun reflected sharply off the U-2's oversized, unpainted silver wings. To a pilot looking up, an object gleaming at an impossibly high altitude didn't look like an airplane. It looked like a flying saucer. CIA investigators later determined that over half of all UFO reports in the late 1950s and 60s were actually U-2 flights. The extreme subtractive physics required to gather life-saving intelligence accidentally invented the very UFO mythology that made Area 51 famous.